Joining us for the brand new edition of the Romero Report. I'm Luis Romero, and we're starting this new series. Usually what we do in, of course, the news world is we have a 2-minute segment for our news stories, and of course that sometimes is not enough to be able to cover the entire story. So I'm joined now with Monica Hatchett, who is with Henry County Public Schools, and if we have a question about the school system, she is able to answer it with no problem whatsoever. So first of all, thank you for being with us and for taking the time out of your schedule to inform our community, our parents, and our students.
Thank you. I'm always so happy to be here.
One of the biggest things that we're going to be talking about is students returning to the classroom. Now, with that being said, this is exciting news for not just the students, but the teachers and staff being able to see the students after such a long time of them not being in the classroom and having to do virtual. So some people may say, Luis, that's not exciting for me. I don't want my child in the classroom. And we have an answer to that, and that is that parents are given the option to send their students to the classroom if they prefer to do so. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Just like in the fall, we are currently asking parents to confirm with us whether they prefer for their student to attend hybrid, which means they would come to school 2 days a week and learn virtually from home for 3 days a week, or to remain virtual learners. Students can move back and forth between those platforms as needed. For example, if a student comes hybrid and it's not working out for them for whatever reason, or they need to be virtual for a while based on the health of their family or other reasons, then they can move between those platforms as well. Certainly because the teachers are already doing virtual instruction all 5 days of the week, so they won't miss anything in particular. Virtual learning is slightly different currently than it is in hybrid learning. In hybrid, students should be able to see the teacher teaching live in the classroom, but then also, if they need to, they can tune in to recorded lessons just like they're able to do now, because we know that not everyone has the internet or may not be available at the same time the teacher's teaching live for whatever reason. So we're asking our families to confirm that for us. Preschoolers and first graders will have the opportunity to attend 4 days per week because of the foundational skills that they need to acquire. We have rearranged some of our schools. First grade's happening in the gym at Stanleytown, for example. Preschool's happening in the gym at Ridge Acres, so that those students are able to distance appropriately and get the instruction they need. In some other schools, they're splitting our students up into smaller classroom areas so that they have that distance but can attend in person as much as possible. And then all students will learn virtually on Fridays, and that offers our teachers the opportunity to record lessons, to meet with students individually, and to tutor if needed, and to plan for the week ahead as well.
What's the date that we're talking about students returning to the classroom?
March 10th. And one of the reasons we arrived at that particular date, which happens to be a Wednesday, is that, as you know, last week we offered our staff members who were interested to come to Bassett High School and receive the vaccine. We were allotted 500 doses, and so we had right around 500 people, maybe slightly more than 500 because sometimes there's an extra dose or two in there, but right around 500 staff members were able to get the vaccine last week. And then we do have a waiting list of people who are being worked into community distributions as they're able to when doses are available. So we still have about 150 staff members who are interested in being vaccinated, and we're working to help them get there. But by March 10th, most of our staff members who want to be vaccinated will have received both doses of the vaccine. So that is an extra layer of protection that a lot of them have expressed that they would like to have in place before we return to in-person instruction. So that is one of the reasons we arrived at that March 10th date.
And talking about reasons why students are going to be returning, of course, on March 10th, we've seen that in the community the number of cases has decreased. We were in the hundreds, and in the month of, the beginning of 2021, even setting some records of the number of cases being reported daily by the West Piedmont Health District, and now we've seen that those have dropped even some into the 40s. So that's one of the reasons. What would be some other reasons that you guys saw it fit for allowing students to have the option to return to the classroom?
We do look closely at community spread. We are still consulting the CDC data, the VDH data, and working closely with the West Piedmont Health District to make sure that we're making the safest decisions possible. But one of the things that we also do is to track our own data. So within our school division, we want to remain around a 1% positivity rate or lower if possible. When we got to our original return to school date, which would have been January 19th, we were still very close to 2% positive. And for us, that was just a little too high. And so we decided to defer for a while. And so we've been watching our data very closely. I'm pleased to report that from the time we came back from winter break until now, we have now dropped to that 1% positivity rate. So for us, that's a sign in the right direction. Certainly we're on the right trajectory and we want to keep that up. We do hope that continuing our mitigation strategies, making sure everyone remains socially distanced, continuing to wear their mask and wash their hands despite the vaccination, because even if you've been vaccinated, you need to make sure you continue to do those things. Just continuing to share that message with our staff members and our students and their families will help us to make sure that the students who want to attend in person are able to do that.
And I'm pretty certain that with the holiday gatherings being in January, that caused those numbers to be high in January, and of course have lowered now, and that is again one of the reasons why students have the option to return. And with teachers being vaccinated, one of the biggest concerns that parents have is, will there be enough teachers to, be in the classroom to teach in classroom instruction? Is that a thing that you guys have looked at and are certain that you will have the teachers?
Well, I think it's hard to say we're exactly certain because we don't know what to expect. That's what the pandemic has taught us the most, right? But we have a higher level of confidence that we will be able to appropriately staff because of our mitigation measures, but also having this in place. Certainly we made the vaccine an option. It is not mandatory for our staff. So not everyone will be vaccinated, and that's okay because that's their choice. But we believe that having that additional layer of protection for those who want it will make it easier to staff our classrooms, our buses, our cafeterias, and all other areas for our students.
Going back to how the classroom will look, what are some of the safety measures that are going to be in place that maybe we have already done in the past but are going to return as students are in the classroom?
Everything students encountered if they came in person in the fall is still in place and will still be in place. We will still have distance between our seats. Students will still be asked to wear a mask in the classroom at all times. Certainly if they're eating, they would remove their mask. We will also be asking for appropriate distancing on school buses. Hand sanitizer, hand washing will be highly encouraged all throughout the school day. We will make sure that all those other mitigation strategies are in place as well, and so that we can prevent any spread. And in the fall, we were actually able to control that very well and manage it very well because those who were in the classroom took that very seriously. And so, like always, our students are very concerned with their own safety and the safety of their peers, and they have adapted very well to this really unusual and unique situation. We've heard from a lot of parents who say, my student really misses school. They miss seeing people. They miss even the things that we would all say kids maybe wouldn't miss about school. It's been a long time. Some students have been home for almost an entire year. When we come back March 10th, some of those students will not have seen us. We will be just 3 days short of 1 year mark. March 13th is when we were closed last year. So we are very excited to see students in the buildings, to see each other again, and to make sure that we're taking care of each other in all the ways possible.
And when we talk about getting to school, how would transportation look? And again, this may be similar to what we saw in the fall.
Yes, very similar to in the fall. Currently, our buses are delivering meals. So beginning March 10th, meal delivery will transform to meal pickup only at schools. Certainly students who attend in person will be able to take meals home with them for the remainder of the week, so they have meals for the days that they aren't in school. But the reason we make that transition is so that our buses can transport our students. So especially for the first few weeks, they will run their regular routes so that they don't miss anyone, students who are waiting at the bus stop, for example. And students will be asked to distance on the bus. They will be asked to wear their mask on the bus. Siblings will be allowed to sit together, or children who live in the same household. But other than that, that distancing requirement will still be in place.
Everyone has learned something new during the pandemic. Whether it's how to protect yourself from the virus or how to do your job or schoolwork differently. And we know that students have learned some of those new things. And how are these things going to be used for the coming academic year, but also to ensure that students are the most successful?
Well, certainly student success is important to us. As part of our core values, we say that we put students first. And one of the things our students have demonstrated and told us is that some of them are really thriving in the virtual environment. They've learned so much, they've become experts and taught us things about how virtual learning can be even better. And so we've constantly, as educators do, learned and grown through this time and implemented new strategies because of suggestions students have. But one of the things that we have introduced for the coming school year is that students who are currently thriving in the virtual learning environment who wish to stay there certainly can do that for the remainder of this year, but we know moving forward they might want to do that as well. So if they are currently being successful, one of the opportunities that they'll be allowed is to apply for our Virtual Learning Academy. So if there's a student out there who is currently doing really well in this environment and they want to remain that way, they will have that opportunity, and certainly they'll still be able to participate in extracurricular activities. That's a big question that we get. If a student remains virtual, can they still do those things? And the answer is yes. They're still a Henry County student. They're still participating with our teachers. So Virtual Learning Academy will be here to stay, essentially. So students who elect to do that will have that flexibility. We will still have school-issued devices for them, and they will work specifically with teachers designated for that virtual academy rather than splitting time with a teacher who is teaching students in person as well. And we feel that that's the most effective way for the Virtual Learning Academy in the fall, because we know that a classroom teacher in the fall, we really hope, will have a full classroom of students at that time.
Perfect. And what we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we will return shortly after this. Again, this is the Romero Report, and I'm Luis Romero, joined with Monica Hatchett of Henry County Public Schools, and we're talking everything that parents, students, and community members need to know about returning to the classroom. So again, March 10th is when we're going to be seeing students returning. First of all, can we just talk about how exciting that is for you, or teachers and students?
Personally, I'm very excited. I spend the bulk of my day most days in schools taking photos of students, working closely with teachers to highlight the excellent things that happen in our classroom. And because of social distancing, because most students have been home most of the year, I'm really missing that interaction and seeing the excitement in their eyes. So even with a mask, we can see that, and so I look forward to peeking in on classes and seeing that happening for students who choose to be in person when we come back on March 10th.
And I hate to be negative, but one of the questions that parents have is, their student isn't performing as well. So how is Henry County Public Schools ensuring that those students get back on track and are able to graduate when they're due to?
Certainly one of the biggest components of that is communication. Our principals and counselors and teachers have been making phone calls, doing everything they can to connect with families and support parents and encouraging their students. Certainly there are lots of parents who are teachers, but there are plenty of parents who, for lack of better terms, have shared with us that they didn't sign up for this. And we completely respect and understand that, because teaching is a difficult job. And certainly a parent who does their regular job all day long and then has to come home and help teach is something that is monumentally difficult. So through the pandemic, hopefully that grace to one another has been shown in that partnership. But we know from talking to parents, from talking with students, from looking at data as far as student grades and performance levels, that there are things that students will need to make up or make up ground on. So to address any gaps that might arise for a particular student, we already have homework help phone lines, Zoom calls after hours for students with the teachers. There are some Saturday sessions that are already taking place and are being planned for the spring. We expect that summer school will be a little bit larger than normal for the students who are interested in participating in that, and our schools will be working with parents to determine what will be the best fit for students who maybe need some additional support so that they are prepared moving into the fall. But I think it's important for everyone to understand, yes, there are still requirements we must meet. The government has not dismissed standardized testing, for example. So we are still working to prepare students for that situation because we want them to be successful there. They have to accomplish a certain amount of SOL tests to graduate. So we want to make sure that they are as successful as possible. We want to see every student graduate on time, but the whole world is experiencing this same situation. So I think you'll see in the next 6 months or so, education will continue to evolve to make sure that our students are being supported in the best ways possible.
And as a parent, if I still have questions, and you talked about some of the services that you offer to get those students back on track. If the traditional virtual doesn't work, what should I do as a parent? Who should I contact to try to get that extra help from my student that I'm concerned about?
First and foremost, talk with the classroom teacher. Beyond the classroom teacher, there may be a counselor or a principal at the school who has ideas because they know the students best. They're more intimately involved with them. But certainly also we have a curriculum team at our central office who can offer ideas and support. Our instruction department with our assistant superintendent who's over that are also always happy to talk with parents and share ideas and support possibilities for them. We have some excellent community partners who are doing a great job of supporting our students in virtual learning. So connecting families with those groups has also been crucial for some students as well.
With Wi-Fi and being able to connect to be able to have those Zoom classes, is there still students that aren't able to do that? And how have you guys addressed that problem?
We know that there are families in our community who don't have cell phone access and they don't have Wi-Fi access, and so they are at a disadvantage. There are limited ways that we can provide assistance with that. The devices that they're using are school-issued devices. They can go to locations like school parking lots that have open Wi-Fi and download the things they need, go home and complete assignments, and then come back and upload. But that's certainly not ideal, especially given our current outside temperatures, for example. And we don't want people sitting in the school parking lot to try to do all of their week's worth of assignments. Certainly they're welcome to if they prefer to do that, but it is not an ideal situation. We have issued MiFis, which are cell signal devices that our devices can work on. They are filtered, so they help protect students in that way, but there are time limits on those MiFis as well. However, if you live in an area that doesn't have a cell signal, those don't work either. So working closely with Comcast, with Verizon, and other providers in our area has been a project that not just the school division, but also the county has been working on, and we've also taken to legislators for this year because in 2021, we just feel it's unacceptable for families, no matter where they live, to not have that access. So advocating for our families, in addition to the practical possibilities that we can provide for them, has been really important for us this year.
And now switching gears into sports, we see that those are going to be starting soon. If I'm not mistaken, it's going to be the 22nd of February. And how would that look different?
Well, just to back up from February 22nd just a little, Virginia High School League allowed the regions to vote on whether they would allow winter sports to compete postseason regardless of whether they had competed in the regular season. And our region did elect to have teams who wanted to do that to participate. So we did have swimmers go to regional competition last weekend, and we have other teams preparing to go to regional competitions in the next couple of weeks. So we are implementing practices for them rather than conditioning, and practice typically involves more contact with one another so that they're prepared for their competitions. And then fall sports, which typically happens in October, September, were moved this year to begin in February, and so fall sports teams are conducting interest meetings this week and beginning their contact with one another starting on Thursday. And so following those interest meetings and structuring their teams the way they need to be structured. They will begin to practice as they approach their competition dates. The first football games are already scheduled for February 22nd. One of the things that will look different, other than having fall sports in February, is that we are still under gathering restrictions, and so we do need to honor those for all of our sports and other events. So for most of them, that means there won't be spectators in the building or on the field with them. However, we are able to offer the option to have local media broadcast those games if they're interested in doing that for families. If we're not able to coordinate that partnership, we may try to do some of that ourselves. Certainly, we're not professionals and they are, so we'll see what that ends up looking like for us. But we have some students who are very good at that too. So we want to make sure that the community has access to those events, because we know that those are events that even if you don't have a student, we have a lot of community members who support our students in that way because they enjoy them. And we'd like to bring that back to our community too.
And with spectators, is that include parents of the athletes being able to come, or are the athletes allowed one parent, or is that something that is a lot different?
Right now it does include parents, simply because the gathering restrictions are so small for the competitive events. To make things fair, if you have a team that has 15 students on it, trying to decide which parent gets to come, for example, or even if every member of the team gets to have someone there, is very difficult. So for us right now, our priority is our students and them being able to compete. So certainly parents would have the option to watch those live broadcasts, but they wouldn't be able to attend as spectators at the beginning.
So basically you're going to have to, give a little to get a little. And going along with that, are we going to be seeing athletes wearing masks, or does that depend on the sport? Does that depend on the individual?
You will see athletes wearing masks. We got a very generous donation of masks from the Virginia School Boards Association. So those have already been distributed to our athletic directors, students who are practicing right now, and students who begin practice during the rest of the month of February will be wearing masks in practice and during competitions. They have been wearing masks during their conditioning time as well.
Another big thing that students and parents want to know about is graduation. How would that work? We saw that, the last graduation was a drive-through. Is that going to be the similar way that things are going to be done this year?
Well, just like with our sports and other activities right now, we are still under gathering restrictions. So at this time, we project that we will probably need to do graduation in a similar way as last year. Certainly if gathering restrictions are lifted, we can modify that in some way, but we want to go ahead and begin planning now so that families know how to plan. Our drive-through graduations were very well received by families. They were very excited about those, so we will institute those again this year. Also, back in August, we allowed families who were interested the opportunity to have their student walk across the stage and receive their diploma in person. So we'll offer that sort of experience again if we're not able to do a traditional graduation. So the plans for that are also in the works. But we know that the community enjoyed our virtual graduations as well. So that is something that will probably never go away. Because our community is very excited about that, we want to make sure that we meet that desire and need as well. So we'll continue to do virtual graduation too.
And starting to conclude our interview, one of the things that I wanted to touch on is if you could talk about just how well educators have performed. And again, I talked to you this off camera, that a lot of individuals feel like, teachers have it easier, or, the job is just done a lot different, so they don't have to put as much effort. And I have a lot of friends that are educators. I've talked to a lot of them in the community, and they have performed, extremely well. A lot of people have had to learn how to do things differently. And can you just talk about how well they've performed and how well they have ensured that student success is still a top priority?
Well, certainly nobody expected last March 13th for this to happen, but also for it to last this long. Every teacher is doing this for the very first time, just like every family is doing this for the very first time. So certainly it hasn't been perfect, and nothing ever is exactly perfect. So we have been especially proud of our teachers and their energy, their willingness to change and adapt, and everything that they're doing to support students. I know for some people, COVID fatigue has been a very real thing, and it feels like it's just been way too long, and we agree. As a former classroom teacher, I'll say nothing's worse than being out of the classroom and away from your students. Teachers don't like to take a sick day because it's not the same when you're not in that room with your students. So for our teachers who have gone so far above and beyond what anybody would ever have expected a year ago is astounding to watch. It's almost otherworldly in some ways because they have had to adapt and learn new technology quickly. Some of them have adjusted completely their curriculum and how it's delivered. When you think about elementary school in particular, all those hands-on activities and manipulatives. I've seen preschool teachers send packets of things home to kids so that they can all get on Zoom and build a house together, for example. So just the sheer desire to support kids and to still give them as much a sense of what they would typically get in the classroom, and sometimes in even better and more creative and innovative ways, has just been an honor to support this year.
Well, we've kind of run out of time, so I want to thank you again for being with us and answering all of my questions.
I'm always happy to do that.
And again, this has been the Romero Report. I'm Luis Romero, and again, we want to thank Monica Hatchett for joining us for this interview. We have a lot more BTW 21 local programming coming up right after this break, so stay with us.